Is everyone ready? I have 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Resolution 1.02.
Move it.
Second. I want to make a notation that there was a late addition of Resolution 5.06. If you didn't see that, please be aware. It came to you in email. Any other discussion? Any other changes or additions, Mr. Polvino?
No, there are not.
Okay, Mrs. Perry, yes.
Okay, Mrs. Albagore,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Where am I looking here? Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
and who did I miss?
Mrs. Lyons.
Mrs. Lyons.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is just a reminder that if someone has that's watching wishes to share a thought or question with the board, you may do so by going to our website. You may reach out to the board through its email. It's clerk. Here I go again. Clerk@Fulton. Oh gosh. You think I would have this memorized?
Clerk@fulton.cnyri.org.
Thank you. I do have it memorized sometimes, just not right now.
We live it all the time.
All righty. Would someone move item 1.04?
Move
Move
it.
it. Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, yes.
Mrs. Albagore,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
excuse me, Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Item 1.05, would someone move it?
Move it.
Second?
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, yes.
Mrs. Albagore,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone.
Yes.
This brings us to the president's report. We have a list of upcoming meetings. Are there any questions with regard to any of the meetings on the list? All righty. I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Superintendent Polvino.
Okay, let me make sure I got my volume on. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody had safe travels out there today. It was our first early dismissal. By the feedback I got, I think we did all right with it. It was kind of last minute. It got really yellow on the radar really quickly, and just felt like we wanted to move our kids a little bit sooner to ensure that if it did sit on us a little bit longer, then it wouldn't be in the middle of one of those dismissals. So went well. So I want to thank my team for doing an outstanding job with that. The first thing, and re-engaging. I mean, we're back now since the 19th. We've re-engaged in learning. This is our second week back. Staff and students hit the ground very well. The attendance looked good last week. I haven't taken a look at it. I know GRB was down a little bit today. I'm sure the kids saw the snow. They maybe thought something was going to go on today. But I didn't check on the elementaries. But our attendance was very good last week, which was great to see. Granby, we had a little bit of a getting out of the blocks with a number of cases last week, but we seem to be steady. We haven't seen any more cases, at least in the last couple of days out of there, and we seem to be settling. I don't want to jinx myself. Had a couple yesterday at GRB. So, I mean, it's out there. There's definitely in our midst, and I think it's a reminder that we've got to be following all of our protocols at all times. And I think it's the other piece is when you do the tracing, and Chris maybe could speak to this a little bit, but what we find is that, you know, we all are ingrained with, and I grew up with it as well, is that you come to work, you go to school, and you never missed. You just come right through it, no matter how you're feeling. And when we've done some of the tracings, you know, people say, well, I really, you know, wasn't feeling great last Tuesday. Well, you know, you should have stayed, you know, stay home. We know you're trying your best and you want to be here. And a number of them are that way. And so just a reinforcement of that, I think is important. So we're monitoring that closely, but I noticed everybody was right back to it this week. wearing the masks and washing their hands and doing what we need to do to keep ourselves safe and keep our kids coming to school. Chris, I want to just add one more thing, the testing. I will check on our limited service laboratory license. I know it's been reviewed. For some reason, they didn't have Dr. Morgan's certification license, although it was sent in the packet. So hopefully in the event we need to do testing, or if in the event we want to do testing voluntarily, we will be set up to be able to at least be able to do the Bimaxes if we wanted to go down that road. With that, Chris, what would you add in the vaccination world part of COVID now?
So we were lucky enough to host 3 different clinics, which vaccinated. They had pretty close to about 1,600 people come through our building to be vaccinated. And it was over 2 weekends and a Wednesday. They came in. They love our setup at the high school. There's a lot of room right outside of our gym. They set up 4 rows of 13 chairs, and we're able to, load people right on through there. So it was a great opportunity for our staff and for our community to be able to get vaccinated right here on site. They have planned and rescheduled the second dose for the same time frame. So we're looking at the 13th, 15th, and the 20th, and that's going to be right back at our high school again. So, and I do want to just reemphasize, if you have a small symptom, to stay home. As we're doing our tracing, we have found over and over again that people say, I've had no symptoms except a little headache 3 days ago. And they came to work for 3 days or came to school for 3 days. And that just expands our contact tracing and just impacts so many more people. So even if you think it's just a slight headache and it's, you've had headaches before, make sure you stay home and follow the protocols that are put in place by New York State.
Yeah, I just want to commend Chris has done a really nice job with that. With all the work with the COVID piece, coincides nicely with the athletics that we'll talk about a little bit later this evening. But I think it gives us an advantage in some areas. But Chris has done a really stellar job, and with that, and I'd be wrong if I didn't put it right out there tonight. And so thank you, Chris, for everything you're doing, as well as the team. The team is available 24/7. I think if we don't talk on the weekend, I think we miss each other. Last night we were on the horns at 7:45 last night when one of our principals reached out to us, and we immediately come together and process. And sadly, we've gotten very good at something. We've gotten a system down pretty good, but it's an important one, and I'm very proud of the work you're doing. So thank you, Chris, and the rest of my team in that area.
Brian, I have a quick question. You might not have the answer right now, but at some point, can you give us an indication of where we're at with the percentage of our employees being vaccinated?
Ms. Geithner, I know you've been you have some idea there. Ms. Geithner?
Here, I would not unmute. My button is sticking. We had about 450 of our staff members reply to our very brief survey, and 60% of them indicated that they had received a vaccination or had a scheduled appointment.
Excellent. Excellent.
And how many employees? I think it's 687.
687 total employees. So 450 responded so far.
So we'll continue to push that out. We want to, obviously, we're also trying to facilitate opportunities for them to get those. So Jerry and Chris together have really, as soon as we get a notice, I think before I even can look at the screen, sometimes you see it'll come out and there's a notice and information, because what we found is the faster that we can share that information, the better. The slots and the availability fills very quickly. So the team also, we keep an eye out on those and we make sure we get them out as quickly as possible. So
just a point of clarification for the vaccine, even though we are hosting it at GRB, it is not a Fulton clinic. It is not reserved only for Fulton staff members or Fulton community. We usually get the link a few moments before it goes live on New York State's link. So we try to get it out to our teachers and or any of our staff members to sign up. But this does go out to everybody in New York State. We had people driving from all over the place last weekend because we have it and other counties don't. So I just wanted to make sure that the community knew that this, while it is at Fulton, it is not a Fulton schools clinic. It is still an Oswego County Department of Health clinic.
Thank you for verifying that. I've had phone calls from people, so thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And Chris, can you comment on our work with the local pharmacy, just that we're still working to do that?
Yeah. So basically, we're just in a holding pattern there, just because, turn the news on and you'll see why. The vaccines just aren't there. They're just not reaching pharmacies or even really our DOHs. So as soon as we get some vaccines here in some of our pharmacies, we will try to be setting up a clinic that would be reserved more just for our teachers and staff.
Any other questions in those two domains? All right. This evening, we're doing our semester 2 adjustments. This is really exciting. I mean, at the last meeting, we listened to a lot of data around attendance and academics and really kind of where we're at. And one of the questions I think we left on the table was, well, what are we doing about it? And we weren't quite ready because there is a lot of pieces to this machine called the Fulton City School District. And to get all the machine's parts working together, there's a lot of dynamics that you have to work with. And so we weren't quite ready, but tonight we've asked Ms. Parkhurst, Mr. Kapani, and Mr. Henderson to join us, along with Mr. Carroll, who will lead them through and share some of the opportunities, things we've learned, things we're adjusting, and how we're going to do it even better for our kids here in Fulton. Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Palvino. Give me just a moment to present. Okay, do we see our presentation?
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you. Yes, so, well, it seems like just yesterday that we were gathered together as an administrative team over the summer, pouring through the state's widely awaited guidance towards reopening schools, making plans towards this very different and really historic school year. And here we are already at the midpoint, looking towards semester 2. And we have a lot to share. I'm very excited and glad to have our principals here to really share the details with you. So a bit of history here to remind us of where we started in terms of our goals for this reopening after the spring closure. First, of course, was health and safety. And with that, bringing in as many students as possible for in-person learning, which we all know really is the gold standard. We worked hard to maximize our capacity and determine just how many students we could bring in safely and in a healthy way to learn in person in their classrooms with their teachers. Next, for all of those students and families for whom in-person learning was not the right choice based on health concerns, we provided an online-only alternative and continue to do so. That's remains an option for all families who need it. And finally, our goal continues to be to provide the highest quality instruction possible in this year of so many challenges, with our mantra being to plan like we did in the summer, reflect on those plans, evolve as we learn, and repeat that process. And that's really what this presentation is all about. As we looked at that planning, we were charged with 3 priorities from the State Education Department. The first, of course, being health and safety. Next, after the trauma, the trauma that came along with the pandemic and all of its various impacts, was to make sure that our staff and students are socially and emotionally well. And finally, of course, our reason for being here, academics and instruction. So as Mr. Palvino reminded us at our last board meeting, we took a really deep dive into what we've learned so far in terms of the data related to our return to school, both on a national level and here in Fulton, how that plays out for our own students. We saw that while in many ways the data here in Fulton follows a similar trajectory to what we see nationwide, there are some areas in which our students in Fulton are not experiencing quite the dramatic impacts that we're seeing in other districts around the country. With that said, our principals have done an outstanding job of leading their staffs, leading their leadership teams towards solutions, adjustments, modifications, and in some cases, wholesale reconstructing of master schedules in order to support our students through some of those areas where we now recognize needed improvement based on our original plans towards the goals of the greatest achievement possible for our students. So let's start from the top. In just a moment, I'm going to ask Mrs. Parkhurst to share some specific details. What I can say in terms of the theme for all of the work that's been going on at GRB over the last really month and a half, I'd say, of re-examining schedules, taking into consideration concerns from students and families, dissecting the data. The theme has emerged of really planning in a responsive way towards meeting the instructional needs that have been identified through that data that we examined last week. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Parkhurst to share some details.
Thanks, Dan. And that, in addition to the goals that, as you know, we're focused on in our district, at GRB, we are very proud, as you know, of our rich electives that we have to offer. And one of our goals at our high school was we wanted to still allow students the opportunity to experience the electives, knowing that they certainly don't look the same as they do in a typical year. That has been one of our challenges, is, you know, building our size to bring students in, offer all of the courses that we have without cutting any of those opportunities. And as Dan said, we've been at the table for the last several weeks, just taking a look to see, you know, what changes could we make and what do we need in order to move in the right direction. So beginning next week, and our new semester begins really on Monday, but beginning on Tuesday with our students, we are extending our instructional day. We're moving our dismissal to 1:15. So we dismiss now at 12:30. So starting next Tuesday, dismissal will be at 1:15. In adding more time to our schedule, we are able to eliminate a majority of the elective course conflicts. It's not clean 100%, but we have eliminated a majority of the conflicts. We're still working through them, and we'll work through them throughout the weekend. Our class periods are currently 42 minutes, and they will remain the same at 42 minutes by adding that additional instructional bell. So more exciting than adding time, I don't know if the students would think that's exciting, but I know in the long run they'll be excited, excuse me, is our shift to 4 days of interactive instruction for both our in-person and remote students. So their instructional model includes the remote students working with our in-person students at the same time. We've gotten a lot of feedback from all of our stakeholders regarding, you know, why can't we have, you know, when the kids go home, why can't they remote in with their teachers? We weren't ready with that instructional model in the fall, and we can say with confidence that we're ready now. So our at-home students will live stream into the classroom to join their in-person peers. Excuse me, and we're pretty excited about that. Our students will be able to see more students than they're used to seeing currently. So I want you to envision one consistent schedule for students to follow, regardless of whether they're in school or at home. And that will alleviate some of the confusion that we've been trying to help our families through. This model also allows for a great deal of flexibility, really depending on the structure of the teacher's lesson. So all of our students are going to begin together at the beginning of the bell. And depending on the activity, and let's say writing, for example, some students, they'll begin together, depending on the lesson, the activity. Some students might sign off for a while. Like I said, if they're working on an essay or doing some writing or responding to some text that the teacher may introduce. Some students may sign off while the teacher is able to work with another group, and that's kind of where that flexibility piece comes in. But again, remember, our remote students are live streaming in with our in-person students. Same course, but same location in person, but the remote students would join in. Our instructional coaches have already begun their work with teams of teachers. We've been really getting in there and talking with the teams, literally showing them visuals of different instructional models, how to flip different groups, different activities that you can do depending on the lesson and the activity and your lesson objective. But we're fortunate to have our coaches rolling up their sleeves and getting busy with our teachers to support these models. And this new model of teaching, it was such a big shift for us in the fall, and now, we're proud. I'm proud of our teachers, but we're proud of really what we've learned, the technology that we've learned in engaging our students in learning remotely and with a limited number of students. Make sure I followed our notes here on the screen. I want to really emphasize that FaceTime and that connectedness, it's really increasing that within our school, and that's something for us to be excited about. And then just finally, I really applaud our school leadership for coming to the table. There were weeks where our leadership team sat down. I'd send them an invite for a daily check-in just to talk about some of the possibilities and making sure that all of the courses within a department are going to be able to work all in sync. So I applaud our school leadership, our instructional coaches, our teachers for being willing to continue to change in our situation and in our models, and finally for our counselors for the work that they're putting in these last couple of weeks, juggling schedules around. So that hopefully gives you a better picture of the exciting changes that will be happening starting next week at the high school.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. This truly is an example of know better, do better. In the summer, when we were making our plans, really in a big way, not knowing what we didn't know at the time, and depending on the current research to give us some guidance, what that current research said was, don't simply stream students in from home to watch instruction going on in the classroom. Well, what we've learned in the meantime is that we have an extremely innovative teaching staff who, over the course of this first semester, have figured out instructional solutions to really incorporating at-home students with in-person students in ways that are engaging and interactive, and really go well beyond that concept of simply watching the students in person in their instruction. And like Mr. Palvino said, a change like this mid-year involves all the moving parts of a school system. So, we need to really extend our thanks to everyone from transportation and Golden Sun who figured out the routing necessary in order to be able to add that additional bell at GRB, to the counseling staff who's going to be working through this weekend, to, Building a single master schedule is a monumental task every year. This, you could say, really is the fourth master schedule that counseling team has built. They've done an enormous amount of work. To Mrs. Parker's leadership team and department chairs and all of the teachers and instructional staff who've put in the work to professionally develop and learn ways to make this work for students. So we're very proud of them and grateful for all of that work. Thanks, Mrs. Parkers. And next, moving on to our junior high school and Mr. Kopani, where you could summarize their efforts as really embracing those same kind of instructional innovations towards increasing engagement and overall student achievement. Again, in response to that data that we discussed before, which our junior high staff just said is not enough for our students, and we're going to band together and find ways to improve. So I'll turn things over to you, Mr. Kopani.
Thank you. So what we're doing at the junior high is, like Mr. Carroll was saying, we saw that our students in our virtual only classes were struggling. We know that one of the challenges we had for the first semester was providing our students and the hybrid model at home, as well as our virtual only students, with a structured and routine day and as much face time with their teachers as possible. So what we're doing at the junior high is we are rescheduling our online only students who were previously learning in a section from 1:15 to 2:30 every day into our 4 blocks. We run 4 blocks, the junior high. And how we're able to do this, that I think is very innovative and very unique, is that every single class will have at least 2 teachers in the class. So we already have seen great things with our humanities pairings. We've seen a lot of really cool projects and activities, and a lot of humanities, social studies, and English is very complementary, as far as English is skill-based and social studies is an excellent content to learn those ELA skills through. And we've seen a lot of great things with science and math. So now we're pairing our in-person electives with our electives that were previously strictly virtual in the first semester. And what we found is we have some natural pairings that are going to work really well together. One of which is 7th grade art and music. And they're already talking about some collaborative projects. The first of which is musical landscapes, which is Mrs. Allmeter picking a piece of music, and Mr. Wink is the art teacher, then having his students create a landscape based on how that music makes them feel. Another natural pairing that we have is FCS and health. So FCS and health will now merge into one block, like art and music. And FCS and health are already talking about collaborative projects, setting SMART goals for personal health, a collaborative nutrition project with their food and culture, a project on relationships and mental health. So what we're doing is the students in our hybrid model that are at home, so let's say cohort B on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and our online only students who will be joining 4 days a week virtually are all going to be live streaming into the class via 2 methods that we reviewed at our meeting on Monday with Mr. Sherman and Ms. Reese. But the thing that's unique is we always have at least 2 teachers in the room. So the students aren't just watching instruction, they have another adult in the room to engage with and interact with. And if they have questions, that adult can field the questions. This is really something we've been building capacity for the first semester with what we've been doing with our humanities and our STEM-based classes, with what we've been doing with our online only classes. And now we're merging it into one, allowing students the opportunity 4 days a week to interact with their teachers and not just watch. They're going to be able to interact via that live stream and via that adult on the other end. So by restructuring our master and scheduling those online only students into our first 4 blocks, what we're able to do that is also very beneficial to students is we're able to open up a lot of opportunity for office hours. So all teachers will now have office hours. Social studies and English will be Tuesday and Wednesday, so they can facilitate office hours with each cohort as well as the online only kids. Math and science Tuesday, Thursday. Our ICT teachers, we are able to provide in our ICT sections not 1, but 2 teachers in the room. 1 to facilitate in-person ICT sections and one to facilitate the online only students in those same classes. Those teachers will also have office hours 4 days a week so they can work with individual students after school. And one thing that we've done, we have amazing TAs in our building, and I have 4 TAs, one assigned to each of my teams. And those TAs will now also have office hours so they can work with individual students as well. So we've kind of streamlined instruction. This is something that we found when we had to move remote only with a few of our teams, is that when students had and knew they had meaningful instruction to participate in on their days at home, they engaged. We had excellent attendance during those days. And by pairing the teachers, they work so well together that they really, we have so much flexibility to cover, to teach separate contents, but then teach them together when necessary, to make phone calls, to get kids to come online for meets.
With Mr. Kopani?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you cut out for 30 seconds or so there, Mr. Kopani. Sorry.
I thought you were about to tell me I've been muted this whole time.
No. Just
Okay.
just probably the last 30 seconds or so that you cut out.
I remember exactly what I said, but I was talking about the ability for us to provide additional support to students and all the things that we're able to do, and the flexibility that our pairing allows us not only to cover when we have a teacher out, but to also have another teacher make phone calls to get students on the meet. The other thing that we're going to be able to do, which will be great, is regular bell-to-bell attendance. And we've restructured our student schedules, which we're going to be sending out next week. So it's consistent from Tuesday to Friday. My teachers are amazing. And the fact that I can put them in front of students 4 times a week via this model has been pretty excited for all of us. And like Mrs. Parker said, I mean, I have to really thank my entire staff in the building and all of my teachers. The innovation that they're coming up with on a daily basis, and the fact that I can sit down with them and have them give me better ideas than I came up with and then put them into practice has really kind of made this run pretty smoothly, this transition. So I think we're all looking forward to the new collaborations and being able to run this schedule and see our kids a lot more than we have been.
Yeah, the work that Mr. Kopani has led at the junior high, looking forward into the second semester, has been really the example of never letting a good crisis go to waste. They have managed to find new creative opportunities like these interdisciplinary pairings that really have a lot of hope as we look forward to a post-pandemic world. That really came out, that came from solutions to what could have been viewed as constraints. You know, that challenge of cohorting the same group of students in the same room for the day to avoid spread of transmission. Through that came those pairings of teachers. And from that, those ideas, those innovative ideas towards really building interdisciplinary models. The staff has just really embraced this concept of innovation, like Mr. Kopani said, and we're all really excited to see this take off over the next semester. So one thing I should also add, Mr. Kopani, that might not be clear to folks, Mr. Kopani talked about all of the increased support that they're able to arrange for students. That's without the addition of any staff. That's all through creative problem solving and use of resources and working as teams. Okay, just want to be clear on that, because it's really the product of a lot of collective, collaborative problem solving from him and his teams. So thanks again, Mr. Kopani and junior high staff. And now moving to the elementary level, where we have Mr. Hendrickson representing his team. In elementary, of course, we, from the beginning in K-5, we've been offering 4 days of in-person instruction for students. And what's happening here is really a shift of focus. In the elementary grades, in which learning is so foundational, and sequential. What we knew going into the reopening after our first go around of closure in the spring was that we had specific and significant curricular gaps that would need to be addressed on a whole group level in order for students to be prepared for new learning moving forward in their new grade this year. Now, as we reach that mid-year point, the shift is towards those individual student needs based on analysis of data that's coming forward through benchmark assessments at this mid-year point. Along with that, again, that concept of innovative instructional practices that allow for the addressing of those individual needs despite social distancing and small cohorts and those other constraints. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you. I would like to reflect the sentiments from Mrs. Parkhurst and Mr. Capani about our teachers and our coaches, because they have been drivers in making sure that our kids are successful and making the first half of the year successful for them and for the kids. I think kind of what Dan was talking about there, and something that we've worked on for a long time in Fulton, is the idea of having a professional learning community and driving with the 4 questions that that's based on, which is what are students learning? How do we know what they've learned? And then, that basically is your curriculum and your assessment. And that's what we've been focused on, which goes along with teaching for the first half of the year. Now that we've got a handle on those, we're looking at the next 2 questions, which is how do we respond to students who are not learning it? And how do we respond to students who already know it? So at the elementary level, and I think at the high school and junior high level as well, we're looking to meet the needs of individual students and small groups of students so that we can cater to their needs. And we shift more from teaching to the learning. We've got a handle on how to teach, how to engage that way. And now we're looking at the actual learning of our students, looking at the data that they're showing us what they've learned and what they need to learn next. So a big part of that is actually analyzing the data, getting together with our teams. That Monday time where teams can get together across the district and look at what our kids are doing is important. They're meeting at the end of the day each day with their grade level teams and with their discipline teams to find out what they can better do for their kids. And what they're finding, what they're asking for is more time to meet with individuals, more time to meet with small groups. And that's why we're looking at that beginning and end of the day time for the kids to be able to have a little bit more time with their teachers to get what they need. A big part of that has been looking at instructional design too, to see what are the strategies, what are the ways that we're engaging across grade levels, because looking at kindergartners, they learn a little differently than 5th graders, and they learn a little differently than junior high and high school kids. So we have to take that all into consideration and meet the needs of where our kids are developmentally and keep plugging forward. It's nice that we have great teachers who aren't willing to settle with, we've got this down. They're looking for the next best thing. They're relying on each other and continually working, putting in a lot of time and a great amount of effort, being willing to reflect and take risks in what they're doing. They've pushed themselves incredibly this year. So I'm really proud of everyone and what they're doing.
Yeah, it really cannot be overstated, the capacity of our teachers and our instructional staff at large to innovate, to learn, to adapt, and to take risks towards the achievement of their students. This year, we have, in order to be able to provide 4 days of instruction for our K-5 students, we have teachers working in roles they never have before and never would have imagined. And they're doing so with the willingness to learn and grow in those roles every single day. Our coaches, our instructional coaches, are the best in the business. And one great indicator of the strength of our instructional staff and coaches is the fact that going into this year, we contracted with some outside experts for professional development in remote learning environments. You know, we wanted to support our teachers the best way we could through this year. It's hard to use them at this point because the capacity of our teachers and coaches is outpacing what's out there in terms of research. You know, it's day to day on the ground, learning and growing and innovating with our students, and we really couldn't be prouder. So thank you, principals, for sharing those details. Are there any questions for any of the principals on any of those specific details that we've just heard?
I have one question. Mr. Capani, I'm really excited to hear about the collaboration at the junior high. I'm just really curious and excited that if this proves successful, is this something you're thinking to continue on post-pandemic?
I think so, yeah. Definitely looking to continue on. I really love the idea of our humanities program with English and social studies and continuing that further. But like I said, the natural pairing of FCS and health, even art and music, and the ability to have this collaboration, create new experiences for the teachers and the students, I think would work great post-pandemic. So I actually had spoken to Mr. Carroll about this the other day. It's a matter of prioritizing that in our master schedule and then being able to configure our schedule to support it while still supporting all the other needs of our students. But absolutely, I think it's been great. I think the teachers really have enjoyed working together and having somebody to work with in the classroom. And I think the students really enjoy having the dual perspectives in there as well. It makes learning a little more interactive and fun.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how often or how soon you're going to go back and look to see if the trajectory of what you're implementing is taking us in the direction you all want to go.
So that's a great question, and there will be different lenses by which we come to those conclusions. So, and that's a good segue to our next slide here. One way, really one of the most immediate ways, will be through our community's feedback. We have administered a survey in relation to our instructional offerings a couple times now, asking the same questions. First at the end of the spring closure, then again at the 5-week point of this current year. And we're going to wait until 2 weeks into the next semester to give students and families a couple weeks worth of experiencing what these changes look like and feel like before we get the community's input. A few weeks later, we'll hit the 5-week point of the third quarter, and we'll have all of that great data that we analyze as part of our practice to take a look really closely at what impact this has had on attendance and engagement and grades and our student achievement data. In addition, well, and really prior to those surveys, we invite our families, our community members, to join and participate in a series of community forums that are being offered beginning this week and next week also. These are building specific, so the families will have a chance to engage with their own building principal, as well as Mr. Palvino and myself and Mrs. Geithner and Mr. Lisi, Mr. Els in some cases, actually Mrs. Adams as well from the special education perspective, to ask any additional questions in relation to how these changes will impact their students or just in general in relation to those 3 priorities that we set for this year of health and safety, social emotional well-being, and academics. And we will certainly keep the board informed of what we gather in terms of all that feedback.
Okay, Mr. Carroll, thank you, and thank you to our principals and our teachers. And if you think about, you know, the slide that Dan had up there at the beginning, really the components that we shared at the last meeting around attendance, academics, SEL, and you now see kind of this next segue into taking that information. You can see how there's a lot of pieces. We know that more interaction with our kids is going to help their SEL. We know that more engagement is going to help them develop the knowledge and skills that they need and that interact. So you can start to see how we're really hitting on those areas, and hopefully it'll be so exciting and more interactive that they can't wait to be there every single day, engaged in attendance. So you can see how all of those pieces come together, and I can't say enough. You know, I hear from my peers. There are a number of districts, you know, that I've had the opportunity to interact with, and they're starting to gear up to bring in secondary students for the first time after the February break, possibly, and they're still working at those. And the conversations that they're having, they're reaching out to us and trying to get information to say, what are you doing, and how's this working for you, and how does this? And we're more than pleased to share. And I think that it's a testament to the leadership of my principals, our principals here in this district, and our teacher leaders, and all of the work that our students are going, because we have to remember they're the ones in the classrooms, and they're the best barometer of what we're doing. You know, it was a great question, Ms. Griffin, when you asked how you're basically going to progress monitor this and get an idea of how you're doing. How we're going to do is we'll directly see that in our kids, in the way they're engaging, interacting, the excitement that they show, obviously all those things that we see in a classroom every day when we're live together, but also we'll start to see it hopefully in the achievement too, you know, because we know nationally and we know here, we know that our kids, the best place for them is as much interaction with our staff and the teachers as possible. So very excited. This was a huge lift, you know, and building a third run in. We didn't even think we ever had a third run here in the district. In less than a month, we figured out how to split a run at no cost. Golden Sun's been terrific, and the team working with Mr. Lisi, you know, to really work through how do we maximize efficiency. So of using routing systems and everything. So this was a big lift, and I'm just really proud of what we're doing. And I thank the board, because the board's a big part of this, because it allows us to take risks. It allows us to try to stretch a bit, and you have to have that confidence that you can do this, and that your board is pushing you to make sure you do those things, but also receptive to the really positive things we do. And sometimes they're going to trip, and hopefully we won't fall. We'll have a trip, we'll get right back up and keep forging ahead and growing. So I'm really proud of what we're doing. So thank you to the crew tonight for sharing. We're going to go into the update on the budget. One of the things that I was pulled out my strategic coherence plan, and one of the areas that we've talked about is maximizing utilization of existing and potential technologies, but also creating opportunities for synergy and interoperability amongst all systems. So over the past month, we've done a little bit of adjusting and working and remaking some connections differently. So Mr. Lisi and Miss Nichols have been working together for the first time. We showed it, we talked about it a while ago, but a little different, using Forecast 5 this evening to provide you our monthly updates. So I'm gonna let Dom or Mr. Lisi and Miss Nichols, a formidable team I'm finding as they come together. They're starting to work really well together, and it's pretty amazing to watch. So tonight's their first foray into sharing with you a different way of sharing with you kind of where we're at right this year, at this point in the year, with our revenues as well as our expenditures. Mr. Lisi and Ms. Nichols.
Would you like me to start?
Ms. Nichols, you go right ahead.
Okay. We're going to show you 5 slides that I believe you've had the opportunity to see a little bit beforehand. The first slide here talks about the revenues that the district has through the end of December last month. And at the top, you see these little half circles that our superintendent likes to call speedometers. And what they show you are where our year-to-date revenues are. So the black line is showing you that as of the end of December, we have recorded actual revenues of about 49% of what we thought we were going to collect through the year. And what we had projected to collect at this point in time was 44%. That's one of the things that Forecast 5 does do for us. It allows us to come up with projections based on history and the assumptions that we're aware of, and adjust them in the background to run these different scenarios. So the first speedometer is the overall first 6 months, all revenues, and then that's broken into a couple of the major categories. The first one being local sources, and that's your tax levy, which I want you to remember, this is not what we've collected as the tax levy. This is what we actually booked in August when you approve the levy. So it will have, over $20 million in there from the levy. It will have the refund from BOCES, the BOCES surplus that was over $900,000 this year. Things like any donations we've had, insurance recoveries, things like that. And so it looks like we're a little further ahead than what we had projected, but really pretty much very, very spot on for the first 6 months. And then when you go over to the next column, to the next speedometer, the actual state sources. So that's basically your state aid. And it shows that we've collected about 26% of our state aid compared to, we thought we'd collect about 20%. Now remember, I mentioned that our projections or our forecast is based on the history that has occurred in prior years. We only have 1 year of history so far loaded into this. We're working on getting more. So the difference here was just timing. We received a state aid payment in December this year. Last school year, we received it in January, so it's not reflected there. And if you just jump down to the bar graph right now, that's comparing the revenue, the local and the state, in a bar graph form, comparing it to the first 6 months of this year to the first 6 months of last year. And you can see the blue, which would be the blue is the 2021 school year. You can see where a little bit more state aid came in. There's a little chart here that talks about the 10 top sources of revenue during the first 6 months, and they show real property taxes, which you would assume. Some state aid, they call it the lottery grant, and then our general aid, which is the basic formula, STAR. The blank spot there is actually the supplemental excess cost aid. We've got to work on why that heading didn't come over. And then you can see the BOCES, refund of prior year expenses, the BOCES amount, the $936,000. So just, I hope that this slide just kind of gives you an idea of where we stand, just on revenue as we've hit the halfway point. Do you want to do the next slide, Dominic? Thank you. Just as the last slide did revenues, this one's going to look at your expenditures, and your speedometers on top are going to give us an idea of what we've spent up to this point. So right now, our spending is under what we projected. We're at just over 38% of what we thought we would have projected of our budget, compared to we thought we'd be at 41%. We're pretty close when you look at actual year-to-date salaries and benefits. That's the second speedometer, and we're at almost 40% there, and we thought we'd be at almost 42%. Two areas there. One is we are spending less in our instructional substitutes and our health benefits are showing a much better year this year and are favorable to budget. Last year, you may recall that we had a little bit of a more difficult year for health benefits. And then the final speedometer are all the other areas, and we are under budget on that also. Now, part of that, as we looked back at the detail, we didn't have a capital outlay project in this budget, the $100,000 project. And also, again, some of its timing. We haven't made a lot of equipment purchases. We tend to make those a little bit later, more in the spring and early summer. So some of that will catch up. But even with all the COVID expenses, which would fall in here, we're still favorable compared to the budget. Down below is the bar graph, shows the expenditures compared to last year at this time. Excuse me. The first set of bars are the salaries, and you can see we're pretty close to what we were last year. Again, a little bit less spending on the instructional substitutes. You can see benefits being favorable. That's the purple line for this year, and again, that's mainly the health benefits. And then there's also a listing of top expenditures, and I think it's obvious our instructional, our regular school teaching would be the highest area, and then along with our benefits, special ed programs, operational plant. So obviously you can read through all of those.
Kathy, I just have one question.
Sure.
In the current environment that we're in, and the limitation for the way that we've been able to implement program, are there any COSERs or BOCES aidable programs that we were not able to participate in this year that will impact us next year in terms of BOCES aid?
I don't think so. We have a pretty robust BOCES spending plan. I think there might be some small tweaks that I'm not aware of from a programming standpoint, but we're pretty much right on budget. So our planned spending with BOCES really looks like what we're doing. We might be a little over just in because we're doing perhaps more Chromebook leases, but that will be taken, we'll have the funds elsewhere where we didn't spend as much. So I don't know if Dom or Brian or Dan could have any more input on that, but I really don't think we took ourselves out of any main areas that are going to hurt us in the future.
Yeah. The other thing we did just recently, and thank you to Roseanne Bain up at City, we took a good look at each of the programs, and she had each of the school districts that are in the city BOCES and looked at utilization of seats or things that we had put in place. And if we were underutilizing, for example, there was an area in a couple of the alt-ed seats, one of the programs up there was a Project Explorer. We worked with the high school, and I got word today that all 6 of our seats will now be filled starting the second semester. So we're really trying to maximize so that we're watching very closely and making sure that anything that we had allocated that we're trying to maximize so that we're not paying for something that we're not utilizing. So we're in the process of doing that. So thank you to Ms. Parkhurst and her team in particular that took a good look at that. And then Ms. Adams, if you, as you know, she monitors special education seats very closely and has done a really nice job, one, looking at programming and looking to see our kids, 100% engaged, what's their attendance looking like, those kinds of things as we monitor their programs very closely. And she's made some adjustments there also, as well as not only for this school year, but as we create our budget and our requests for next year, she has already made some adjustments in anticipation of some programming. So in the better interest of kids. So it'll be a lot of things going on, Mr. Cordon. That's a really good question.
Thank you.
All right. Next slide. There we are. This slide is really in two pieces. We're looking at on the right, we're looking at the last year, the 1920 school year, as of the end of December, comparing it to where it ended up the school year, and then to the box to the right is really this year, and I'd like to just focus on that. Again, the top part is revenues, and broken into state, local, and federal. Federal is the Medicaid money that we receive. The state is all the state aid, and local, as we talked before, it's mainly the levy, but it's the BOCES refund, it's donations, it's textbook fees, those sort of things. So we're comparing where we are as of the end of December to the annual budget of 73 million. You can see what we've collected, shouldn't say collected, what we have recorded as revenue so far at the end of December as being the 36,289,000. And if you compare again to the revenue last year at this time, you can see that difference, the 32 million to the 36, just reflecting the timing difference of when we received the state aid. When you look down at the expenditures, if you compare the current year to date to the prior year to date, you can see we're very close. And then when you look at the benefits, this year through December, we're at 8.5 million, but you can see again that the benefits were more expensive through last December, which is because of that healthcare being a little bit better right now for us. And then you can, just as you compare, you can, again, just kind of showing that we appear to be favorable in our spending right now. What I do want to point out is that $8 million surplus number, that is not, I would have preferred that not probably be in the report, but all that is the revenues that we've recorded so far minus the expenditures that we've recorded so far, and it shows 8 million. By the end of the school year, we will be much closer to what the annual budget says. So that number will be much closer to zero. Our expenditures will be, much higher than they are right now, and obviously our expenses will be much closer to what our budget is. Things we do still have to be careful to watch for, though, in our revenues. The biggest concern right now is the pilot from the Sunoco plant, Addis plant, and what ends up happening with the over 300,000 that we won't be receiving as a pilot this year, and hopefully we'll receive something on that. But that still remains to be seen. But things like that we'll be keeping an eye on, with both the revenues and the expenditures. Any questions on this slide? Mr. Lisi, please. This slide just really kind of a recap, looking at revenues again, our local ones and our state aid. And you can see it taking the prior year to the current year, showing that as of at this point in time, the end of December, we're trending a little bit ahead of where we were last year. And then also the other box is the expenditures by the different categories. Again, you can see that the salaries are about online. Benefits a little bit favorable to last year, and overall pretty close, maybe just a little bit better this year. Questions on this one? And I think we have one more. Okay, and now this one is taking we're not comparing to last year. What we're doing is we're looking at where we are, and the blue is now a forecast. And the forecast is developed by taking 6 months of actuals, which we have right now, and then trending what did we think we were going to collect based on history and assumptions that we know. What did we think we were going to collect? And then comparing that to our budget. And really, we are pretty close. You know, a little bit of fingers crossed right now that this holds, and that I think that, you know, overall the district did a good job with its budgeting for this school year, even with the challenges that it faced. Let's see, just looking to see if I had any other notes, but I think basically a takeaway from this is that we do seem to be right now in a favorable position compared to our budget. I guess that's if there's questions.
Yeah, are there any questions? So this is a little different style, you know, and I think it's evolving, that we're taking a little bit more time tonight to share the information. It's the first time you all interacted with it. You know, as we move forward and you become more comfortable, you know, with it, we'll be able to add more to it as we get more comfortable with it as well. I think it's going to be good for us. You will see this in the second meeting of the month, every month, as we move forward. I think one of the questions that often comes up is it encumbrances or expenditures. You notice Kathy used the word very clearly, expenditures. These are actual numbers that are in the WinCap system. These are pulled right out. So these are actual numbers. Is that correct, Ms. Nichols?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Everything that's in here it's basically ties out to the reports that you would be getting from the treasurer, and it's loaded into the Forecast 5 model. Will be uploaded every month, and then we're able to, well, we'll learn a little bit more about how to, you know, create different views, different ways of looking at things. So
Yep.
different comparisons, which is something that was difficult to do in a software program like WinCap that doesn't do graphs and doesn't even do the comparisons for you to prior year. You know, you had to do all of that by hand. So this is very, this is a very nice program to have for our use.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I go in there and I play quite a bit. I actually enjoy getting in there a little bit. You can actually drill down to functions and object. You can really go that far and actually make comparisons, I believe, as well. Is that correct, Mr. Lisi? I'm speaking correctly? Good. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I have a question for my colleagues. Is there anything, are you good with this format? Did you find this helpful? Because this has been the goal. And so your feedback is important to as to whether or not this is helping you better understand this reporting. And this will be, again, as Superintendent Polvino said, you're going to see this every second meeting of the month.
I think it's helpful for the public as well.
I do too.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it was very helpful.
All right, thank you, because that's part of what we were trying to achieve here.
Yep.
To make it more meaningful and easier to understand. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know, thank you for pushing on. This is one of the examples, you know, I talked about earlier. You know, if you have a board that believes in you and supports you and allows us to make some mistakes, it's taken us a while to evolve on the Forecast 5. Eventually, as we get more comfortable with this, we're going to be able to do more forecasting as we get more information into the system. And that's going to allow us to start projecting things out further. Obviously, this is a very unique year budget-wise. In your this evening, I just wanted to bring attention. So thank you for the feedback, and we will continue to do that. And thank you to Ms. Nichols and Mr. Lisi. They actually ran me through it today, and I enjoyed it. There's a bulleted list as well that Ms. Nichols had prepared. We can share that as well, that just of all the points that she brought up on each slide for a summary as well. So you'll have that. So thank you to Ms. Nichols and Mr. Lisi for that. The budget committee is coming together quickly. Let me count: 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think there's 10 as I quickly count. We're waiting on 2 additional responses. Our goal is a team of a minimum of 12. We have union representations. We have departmental representations. We have a parent. Oswego County Opportunities has a representative. a couple of parents that serve on site-based teams. One I know, she's a parent on a site-based team and a business owner in the community. So we're developing a team, and I don't know what waiting on 2 additional responses is, but Ms. Perry, I know, was reaching out the other day because we were hoping to diversify, making sure that we've got different segments of our community, represented on this committee. So it's my first foray into budget committees. So I'm looking forward to that. That's next Tuesday. I believe is at 6 p.m. I have right in front of me here. Budget committee is at 6 p.m. next Tuesday. So excited about that. A lot of the information that committee will see, you have been seeing, because we want to build their capacity this evening. And I don't know if you want me to pull it up or not, but I did share, maybe I will, quickly on the present now, if I can do this quick here. You know how much I enjoy driving at the same time I...
Superintendent Polvino, I just wanted to have you outline for the board that we discussed that the board is invited to all the committee meetings.
Yeah.
Your attendance is not required. It is, you are invited, you're encouraged. And what we discussed was if there's a quorum, then we'll have to open and close the meeting. And that's the only thing that will have to happen. So if there's not a quorum, there won't be a meeting to open or close.
And we have
So we'll get the links then to all the meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And if we have a quorum, we would open and close the meeting as more of a formal meeting because of the quorum.
Yes.
And the other piece is, I think we're planning, and I can't find Miss Perry on there. She's somewhere on this screen. There she is. That we're going to be live streaming as well. We'll be streaming the meetings as we've been doing. I believe this is our plan. So so it will be a public meeting. And again, I'm trying to, this is one of the things that COVID has done. It's given us an opportunity to explore new and different ways to communicate with our community. So that's a big one. I wanted to share with you, I know how difficult the 88-page PDF runs are, and I'm always look forward to when the Council of School Superintendents puts out this one, because it's so much easier. So in your board, on board docs right now, this is actually, I pulled it right off board docs tonight. This is the New York State run, and you can see just how much money, allocations, things like that there are statewide. The one I want to draw attention to is this services aid piece. And this is a part that we're really taking a really hard look at. And this is where in the past, and Kathy, please chime in at any point if I misspeak here. The services aid were, I believe, 11 different aids were in there. Your transportation aid, your BOCES aid, your textbook aid, all of those. And they were combined this year, as you can see up here at the top, into just a services aid. Well, when you do that formula, what happens statewide, this is, okay, there we go. This is a picture of what happens. And here's what happens when you combine those aids. This was actually put forth last year, and the different advocacy groups, NISPA, NISCUS, all of those different groups said, no, this isn't the way we should be going. Look at what the formula does. It's a 17% reduction across the state, $692 million when you combine them this way and work the formula. Is that a good way to say what I'm saying, Kathy, or am I being, okay, good. And then I'm gonna flip on Fulton for you. So once again, we're able to, and I sent this to you as well. You can see here's Fulton. You drop down to Fulton, and by combining these aids into one up here in this services aid right here, it says 0.6, but when you actually look down here, the change versus the current law by forming it this way is a 4.3% reduction in the area of our services, so it's $416,000. So this is a good example of why combining the services isn't necessarily good for school districts. Kathy, you want to add anything to that? Or am I being too simple, or?
No, you're pointing it all out. It's just their way of, it's just not good. I mean, he tries something like this every year, and it really takes away from the what BOCES, the value that we receive from participating in BOCES coasters, and I just don't like to see it with a a district like us with such a high BOCES aid ratio, it really hurts. It ends up it ends up costing us.
Yeah. So one of the things that I believe NYSBA, NYSCUS, which are NYSBA is the New York State School Boards Association, and the New York State Superintendents Association, as well as ASBO, which is the state organization of business officials. I've shared with you the NYSCUS and the NYSBA documents. What's interesting is everybody's saying the same thing. This is an area where Ms. Griffin, I know the board often talks about what are those target areas. I know we have advocacy coming up soon, legislative advocacy. This is an area which is not good for school districts, and all three of those organizations have drawn attention to the fact that this is not. So this is an area where we're probably going to want to, when we do meet with our legislators, is an area where we're going to need to reinforce.
That was one of the reasons why I asked the question about our utilization of BOCES, and if we were still, if we were holding back under the environment, and maybe that had any connection to that number. Thank you.
Yep. No, great. Yep. So yeah, that was there. And then the other documents that you've seen, I'm not going to go through them tonight, was I provided you the document with the NYSCUS webinar pieces. And the one I want to draw attention to is down here, if I can find the quote, maybe. If it's on this one, let's see. Probably not. Let's see. Of course, whenever you want to, you can't find it. So I'll read it because I made a note of it. It's on page 14, so one more. And what this is this is a quote, and we've been watching. This quote's been placed in stone. The State Division of Budget released a statement Thursday saying a school districts will receive full aid payments this school year, including a restoration of earlier payments to districts that had been reduced. No funds will be withheld from school districts. Division of Budget spokesperson Freeman. So this is one that I want to draw attention to because this is something we've been watching all year. And for them, and this was brought up at the webinar with Nick the other day, that this was an important one that we're all waiting on. They did remember, we did lose some revenues. There was some withheld from the end of last year. Was it August and July payments, correct, Kathy? And the question we have in our mind is when it says you'll receive in this school year, is that semantics for saying we're not going to see that last year? So that's a piece that we're looking at to say, will that be also, because they made the statement, restoration, will that be restored as well? And if you recall, Kathy, correct me, my math is, it was around 650, if I'm correct.
Right around that, yes.
Yep. So that's a question, but this was a piece I wanted to draw attention. I normally wouldn't take pictures of the slides. The PowerPoint wasn't out yet, and I wanted to share that with you yesterday. So that was a piece that I wanted to put forward. So those are the documents that you have. We continue to work very closely and watching through the different state organizations as they are going through each aspect of this budget and breaking it down into components. It's more complex than ever before. I think the biggest challenge we have, and probably the piece that we've got to watch the most closely, is that this budget is extremely dependent on federal funds. And the problem with that, and Kathy, you can talk about it, the cliff that you're going to have. And we saw it with GEA, was it about 9, 10, 10, 11, the Great Recession? And now we knew what happened. It took us about, I think it was till 19 to get everything back where we had been prior to that. Kathy, do you want to talk about the cliff at all? And then that'll be the last piece I talk about budget tonight.
Sure. Oh, my mic is on for one.
Yep.
Just if anyone remembers, when we had the funding from ARRA, that, we being so dependent on, when you're dependent on the federal aid, it doesn't last forever. And your state aid hasn't grown during that time. It just gets backfilled. And I think we're all looking at, how can we have a school budget built on built on aid that had to come from the federal government that may work for a couple of years, but we know that it's not going to be a long-term solution. So And actually, I'd like to, Mr. Polvino, I'd like to mention one of the things we looked at on Forecast 5 earlier, where we could see what happened when we went through that. Even if we went back multiple years and we saw how with teaching, with our program component of the budget, how we had lower, you could see the spending get lowered and how that hurt, you could, or potentially hurt program because of that cliff that it's easy to fall off of. I appreciate the idea of having aid restored, but I hope that they can come up with long-term solutions, because anything, at some point we're going to run into that issue of not being able to maintain that level of spending. So it still kind of means that we still have to be cautious.
Yeah. So, thank you, Kathy. I just wanted to draw attention to those things. That was probably the best news, that withholding piece that came out. So I wanted to draw attention to that. That's probably the best news that we've seen over the last week. Remember that all of this came out on the 19th. So today is just 1 week since we started to digest what exactly was coming out. In fact, I don't think we had to run the state aid runs until around 5 a.m. on Wednesday. So it's a work in progress as we learn more and more each day. And what we'll do is we'll get our budget committee up to speed, so we have that information as we move forward to develop a budget that will be both fiscally responsible and also ensure that we can keep our kids, all of our kids, on a path to success well beyond our walls as they, have their graduate and move out into the world. And we've got 13 cohorts of kids that are in the pipeline right now. So looking forward to the work that we're going to be doing over the next coming months as we decipher and keep our fingers crossed that the federal stimulus, this budget from the governor is based on $6 billion, $3 billion in this school year, or in next, and $3 billion in the next over. And that was his minimums, was $6 billion. If he gets the $15 billion into New York State, that will be a much better situation for school districts. So the closer to the $15 billion that the federal stimulus hopefully can provide, the better. But as Kathy said, that's like taking money out of the savings. Eventually, you got to have the capacity in the system so that you can sustain over time. So it'll fill gaps. The problem is you got to make sure you're backfilling the gaps so that you're ending up with a balance in the end. And there's a couple $1 billion that aren't in there. We lost $1 billion in the current budget we're in from the CARES money, and now there's another $1 billion. So there's definitely, the cliff is something. That's why we went back and we looked at the Forecast 5 and looked back just to see what did GEA look at that time. It's very interesting to see. You can really see our story quite well. So thank you, and we'll keep you apprised. So we did add an item this evening, and that's, I think I heard we have over 80, at least at one point, over 80 people watching our board meeting. But I was saying today was, what better, a snowy night and a live stream of our Board of Education meeting. So I guess we're a good show in town this evening. The last piece this evening is the winter sports. To give you a little bit of background, we really had no inkling this was coming. At Friday afternoon, I received a social media correspondence, and I was a little bit surprised when I saw it, because it said, it was announced that sports, high-risk sports could start on February 1st. I thought, well, maybe I missed an email or something. Looked at my email quick, nothing there. So took a look at Syracuse.com and saw the article. And so basically, districts, departments of health, everybody found out at the same time, mid to late afternoon on Friday of this past Friday. We received some limited guidance, very consistent with the 16-page document that I believe we shared with you back in the fall. It really wasn't much of a change. It was a paragraph added in there, I believe. And then we were looking forward to this document, the return to interscholastic athletics, all tabbed out. It was a little light reading. Last evening, came in around 6 p.m. And we've been working through that document to really get a feel for that. The other pieces that we've done is we've gotten some feedback from the Department of Health. And I'm going to let Chris speak in just a moment. Department of Health has given, one of the requirements from the governor was that the Department of Health in your county would have to give some green lights. They have given a green light for high-risk sports to occur here in the Oswego County. They've made one stipulation that there is no spectators. That was the one thing that they put out there. They have identified that we need an informed consent, and they have and I think that's a good idea. The other piece is, so we are going to be moving forward. We have some better data now than we had in September. I believe we made the right decisions in September. And now, based on the fact that the DOH is Department of Health is indicating that they're not seeing, when they're doing all their tracing, and they would see all the kids, and all the tracing in the county, they're not seeing student-to-student passage. And so they've given that green light. I will say, as we move forward, that we will follow all of our safety protocols here. We will do mask wearing, and we will only compete if we're competing, whenever this evolves, how this evolves, that our competition, ironically, one of the school districts said the Fulton philosophy. I wondered what that was. Fulton philosophy was, we wear masks here, and we've been wearing since July. And that was one of the major issues in the fall, that we could not get a commitment that other districts would do the same. And we're starting to get that. So Chris, if you'd like to speak to that, about some of the things that we're looking at. Obviously, we're about 72 hours into this. I will say that it's time to do some things, but on some very tight protocols. We have not accomplished what we've accomplished by going halfway and just doing the musts. We've always done the musts and the shoulds. And a simple should was, they said you should wear masks all day in school, and we did that right from the beginning. So with that, Mr. Ells, if you'd like to speak a bit, please.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me on tonight. What a pleasant surprise for us to get that news on Friday. For us to be able to, have the opportunity to look at, our high-risk sports. That would include girls and boys basketball, ice hockey, and cheerleading and wrestling. So it would include those sports. We got the permission by the state to start up on February 1st, and that will run through. So I've been working with our league. It's the 16 schools of the Salt City Athletic Conference. And we've been working. We met yesterday for about 5.5 hours. We met again today, and we agreed on some opening dates and ending dates. So the season right now for the winter sports would go from February 1st till March 13th. And then fall 2 sports, which would be the sports that we didn't play last fall, that would start on March 8th and go through April 24th. So the winter sports would get a 6-week season. Our fall sports too would get a 7-week season, with spring sports starting after the fall 2 sports. So we've been working on a lot of different protocols that we would put in place. Spectators for us, they were taken right off the table by the Department of Health for us, so we won't be having spectators. From there, I've met with the coaches. We met on Sunday evening to discuss the basic protocols, and we have these protocols put in place, throughout the school day, and we'll carry those over into the nighttime and for our athletic teams. And that would include daily screening temps, washing of hands, mask wearing, social distancing. As we discussed on Sunday night with our coaches, this isn't just, opening up the floodgates and we're back to normal like last year. There's a lot of things to put in place. Practice schedules to make sure that teams don't overlap, making sure that there's teams are spread out, limited use of locker rooms, if any, their own water bottles, not shared equipment, hand washing, equipment washing in between practices or even in between timeouts. Those are all things that we'll be putting in place, as we start the year. I know our student athletes are really excited. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry. Is there a plan, at least for the parents that want to see their student play, that any of the contests will be recorded or available virtually?
So yes. So there is a plan in place, and we hope to get a dry run of that, or not a dry run. We hope to get a first run of that. We have a wonderful person named Tim Wilson. I think he's on here tonight, streaming our board meeting. So Tim says he's got a link for us to check out our virtual swim meet on Thursday night. And that is our plan, is to be able to do our competitions virtually.
Right, and we have those cameras in our GRB gym as well, correct? The special.
That is correct. So we have the Pixelot camera that's up in the gym. It does live stream automatically. It doesn't even need an operator to be filmed.
Where will the links be so everybody can enjoy this?
So we will post those on the athletic webpage or on Facebook. However, whatever Tim feels is the best way to get the information out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other piece I want to, as Chris is going, I don't want to interrupt him, but the other thing is that we actually, there are some sports that are more complex than others, with much more physicality. And one of the things that, the internet is a wonderful thing. And I'm going to give kudos to the state of Michigan tonight. The state of Michigan actually mandated mask wearing in all sports as directed by their state Department of Health. And they put out some I would word tremendous data or tremendous guidance around wrestling and basketball, some of these high-risk ice hockey. So as we do in Fulton always, I've already sent some of these documents to Chris. He's probably tired of me piping them over to him, but tremendous guidance about how we can, and there's some great ideas on to how to further tighten up our protocols to ensure that we keep all of our students and staff safe. And I'm including those students that are not a part of athletics and all those other pieces. I'm also going to anticipate one other question. And I think Ms. Parkhurst went off the call at this point, but she and I discussed this evening. We had already started working on, she had, the extracurriculars have been going. Music, she had been doing a survey with chorus, band, and orchestra, setting those up for kids to come in on Mondays. So we have a number of plans in the works for them. There was a question also about the extracurriculars. There's a pamphlet. Of course, I stopped sharing, but I can share it with you. It's an extracurricular clubs pamphlet that she shared with me that she had sent out to all the families, which talks about all of the different clubs that are going on, the dates and times. If the board want me, I could put it up on the screen, or I can just send it to you, but I'm looking at it right now. I didn't print it, or I would go like this. But I'm looking at it, for example, chess club, learn the game of chess, club advisor, Mr. Fasulo, email is this, join the Google Classroom, class code this, meets Mondays at 1 p.m. And it has each one of the class of 23, class of 24, library club, yearbook, WGRB news, so on and so forth. So all of those are set up. And I know that the band, orchestra, and chorus were actively participating in the survey. I think I mentioned that to Ms. Albagore the other night, that's out there. And I didn't write down the number that Ms. Parkhurst told me, but I believe we've gotten 78 responses back so far. And so we're waiting. She was going to put that out, and she knew that those teachers are also excited about doing that. They've identified locations in the building to do social and physical distancing as required. And doing those, I call them pods. I guess you could call them groups of 6 that you're always playing with, your instruments, things like that. So I wanted to bring that up, that this is not just a focus on that. So I wanted to get that in there. Chris, is there anything else you want to add? I think the other piece is we're going to progress monitor this very, very closely. And then there was one other piece that I wanted to bring up, and I've discussed this with some of my colleagues. That if we, in the event that, because it wasn't clear, and so in the guidance, so hopefully it's clear now amongst my peers. We've agreed that if, for example, we had to go to virtual, extracurriculars would go on hiatus. So for example, if it wasn't just COVID cases, but the COVID cases had to say, let's say GRB had to go out on remote learning full because we weren't able to staff. We will not participate in athletics or extracurricular activities during those times. So the idea is, where I started earlier this evening, which is let's follow our protocols. If we're not feeling well, and I'm not a good one that does that, I have to work on that constantly. If you're not feeling well, don't come to school. That's what we're finding with our tracing. That's really the key. That's what results in the quarantines. So, and again, we also just had one recently, felt great right through Thursday, and then Friday woke up not feeling well. You know what? That person did the right thing, called in, said, I can't, that happens. But many of the other cases are that way. So I think this is something that's a work in progress. It'll be evolving. Chris has been working, and I'm going to give him credit. He is our athletic director. Sometimes I don't give him as much credit because he's now our COVID coordinator so much, and he's doing a good job with both. But he's also become a COVID leader amongst the athletic directors, is what I'm going to say. He's bringing a lot of knowledge to those meetings because he and I talk about them after. And I believe his leadership is starting to show. And to hear that we've got other districts that want to do it the Fulton way, with really looking at mask wearing and some of our protocols, that only happened because Chris was sharing that information. And I think that's going to make a difference for us and for others. So I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that. So thank you. Ms. Griffin. You're off.
Okay, are we going to be in a position to offer anything to our younger students?
Chris?
So I hesitate because, as of Friday, I didn't think we were offering anything. So now, we're 72 hours later and, we've just gotten the approval basically today from the Department of Health that we could even run the high-risk sports. That would be my goal, is to be able to offer sports at all levels, modified, JV, and varsity. So we've got to look at gym space and how that would look and how we'd be able to socially distance. My plan is to bring all three levels in.
Okay. Chris, gym space. I just want to draw attention. If you remember, our classrooms have half the desks. They've got removed many of a lot of the furniture. They're very streamlined classrooms. Well, all of those materials had to go places. So if you walk into our schools, you'll find, for example, if you walked into the junior high, the back gym at the junior high is absolutely full, organized by classroom of all the materials by classroom. So the whole gym is full. The big gym has got about a quarter full, which we'll be able to adjust. High school gym has been kept open, but other parts, the small gym there is completely full of materials. So we don't have access to all of the different facilities that we normally do because all of those materials had to be stored because they have to be ready to go back into the classrooms when we get the go ahead to go back.
So all I want to really ask is moving forward, I can tell you're not in a position, and I'm okay with that we don't know what we're going to be able to do going forward, but can we just communicate periodically with folks as we come to some conclusions, and I don't know what they're going to be, but as you conclude whether we're going to do something or not do something, could we share that?
Absolutely.
Because that's been a constant question with a lot of our parents the younger students is when.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
I've had some people text me that are watching the meeting, so I'd like to say what they would like to know. How did you or the school district or the health department come to the conclusion that it was okay for the Fulton School District to do sports?
Well, first, I mean, it was approved by New York State or by the governor and New York State Department of Health. And, we're in a different place today than we were back in September when we made that decision. And the reason I say that is because back in September, we didn't even open up our school doors yet. We didn't know on how the virus would interact within the school setting. So we took that information, that we've had for the past 4 months and have noticed that there hasn't been a transmission within the schools. We are not seeing transmission from classroom to classroom or even within the class. So, we take that information and be able to, offer more opportunities. And when you look at, there were schools that played soccer. Well, I'm going to use soccer as an example. It's similar to basketball as far as spacing goes. When you look at soccer, there were thousands of games played in Section 3 last fall. And while there were teams that may have had to quarantine, there wasn't transmissions on those teams. An example of that is player from one team tested positive the day after a game. If the transmission was really going amongst the field or amongst the players, then you should have been able to see numerous student athletes from both schools contracting the virus. We didn't see that. We didn't see any. So that's why we are taking that kind of information as far as a safety point of goes, and being able to open up more opportunities for our students at the school. And again, just like any extracurricular activity, when you add extracurriculars, the students are more engaged. They want to be at school. They want to be, more involved in school. So I find it very important to try to get us back into our athletic programs as much as possible. And as Mr. Palvino says, I oversee the COVID, the PPE. I know what we have. I know what needs to be done. I know we can be safer than any other school out there. So that's one of the reasons we're coming here tonight with a different point of view than we had last September.
Thanks for explaining.
Yep.
Mr. Els, I just wanted to reiterate and make sure our student athletes will still have to follow our attendance and grade requirements that we've had set.
Absolutely.
Great.
Course requirements, 3.5, the credits.
It's 3.5. Well, yes. We've always had a 4.5 or if not 5 here at Fulton schools. The New York State New York State requirement is 3 plus phys ed. So they have to be enrolled in participating in those classes in order to participate.
And passing eligibility, the whole deal.
Absolutely. Yep. This is just like a regular season.
All right, well, we'll keep you apprised if there's if you have any questions, or if you have community members that have questions, things like that. This is evolving. As I said, in the beginning, we were trying to figure it out. Now we're the leaders. We actually are kind of taking a lead. And it's interesting. There are a lot of questions, and I think it's to our advantage with Chris and whatnot, but I think we're making a good decision, but we're going to monitor this extremely closely. And the expectation is that we're following all of our safety protocols when we're here practicing and internally, as well as any teams that come to us. And we will also practice our practices when we go other places when we do that. And my expectation is we'll only compete with school districts that share our similar philosophies. And Chris has been working on that as well. So,
Mr. Miles, I do have one quick question, because Oswego County Department of Health is saying that we can't have spectators, but I'm going to assume that you're playing some other counties as well. Do you know what their Department of Health requirement is on spectators?
I have. So we met today as ADs, and that would be Onondaga, Cayuga, and Cortland counties. We're all involved in that meeting today. None of the health departments had finished their meetings before we left ours. So I don't have that information as of now. I do know that there are schools in the Onondaga County specifically that will not allow spectators, even if the Department of Health does.
Okay. Just curious, because parents might want to go to other counties if they had that opportunity, but wouldn't want them to drive all that way if, like you just said, some schools wouldn't allow that anyways.
Absolutely. And we will definitely have to make sure that we communicate, what schools will be offering it and what don't. And coaches will have to do a great job of, being able to reach out ahead of time to make sure that those protocols are put in place beforehand and communicated back to our parents.
What I'd like to ask on that point if we're not going to allow spectators at our sites, but others are we going to say to our parents, you can't come to our schools, but you can go to somebody else's?
Yeah. Our parents would be able to go to the other schools.
Okay.
That is, a Department of Health or Department of Health regulations. So we wouldn't be able to stop our parents from going there. So absolutely.
That's good. And that's the conclusion of a very diverse superintendent's report tonight. Thank you. Ms. Griffin.
All righty. Would someone move item 4.01, please?
Move it.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore,
Yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
I'm wondering if you would be interested in batching 5.01 through 5.06.
I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion on any of those items?
None.
Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lyons, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore.
Yes.
Would you like to batch items 6.01 and 6.06?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Any discussion on any of those resolutions? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lyons, Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
Mrs. Albagore.
Yes.
And board forum, and so I'm going to go to the quietest member again here tonight. Sam, Nay. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. And would you like to kick us off? If you have any thoughts for us this evening or questions?
I just wanted to say I'm really grateful that sports are finally coming back. And it's good to have something to look forward to and keep going throughout the school year.
Thanks, Sam. Mrs. Lyons.
I'm trying. Thank you for everybody that's presented. Chris, again, I can't thank you enough for everything you're doing. I mean, as well as everybody else, but you're doing double duty right now, and I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone.
Mr. Crandall.
Well, thank you to everyone's presentations. I think we're doing okay. On our budget reports, I'd like to see a thing on expenditures for like overtime. And there was something else. Utilities.
Is everybody, the rest of you, interested in seeing a report on overtime and utilities? Can you just give me a show of hands or? Okay. All right. If we could do that.
Okay. Yep. I'm good.
Anything else, Mr. Crandall?
Nope.
Let's see. Mrs. Cooper.
I know that Mrs. Parkhurst and Mr. Campani have stepped away, but I just wanted to thank them for their presentation. I have to say, as a parent with a kid at the high school, the staff at the high school has been amazing, really reaching out and checking in, doing an incredible job. And I'm excited to see what's going on at the junior high school and all the new developments. Ms. Nichols, I enjoyed the Forecast 5 presentation. Thank you so much for going so in depth. And finally, I just wanted to say a really big thank you to all of our teachers, our principals, and all of our staff. You guys really are amazing and innovative and changing constantly with your technology and now pairing and co-teaching, and you guys are just so engaged, and I know that you're tired, and I thank you, our students thank you, our families thank you, the board thanks you. You guys are just really doing an amazing job. And that's it for me.
Mr. Cordone.
Yeah, so much like what everyone else has said, I want to thank the administrative team for the update tonight. I found this meeting and the information that we're able to receive and provide to the community hopeful, for reasons, for the delivery of instruction to our students. I think they're craving to be more engaged, and I'm pleased to hear that there's going to be an increased opportunity for them to move from the 2 days of direct instruction to the 4, especially at the high school. I'm very pleased to hear that our student athletes are going to be able to kind of resume their lifestyles and the choices they've made to keep themselves emotionally, safe, I guess, and positive. They make life choices that have gotten them to where they are. And it's been a difficult 10 months, to say the least, for them. So I'm grateful for them to have that opportunity. And thank you, and looking forward to more updates.
Mrs. Abelgore.
Well, my colleagues have pretty much thanked everyone and touched base on most of the points that I would have asked tonight or thanked about. I am pretty excited to see how it moves forward over at the junior high. Mr. Capani's idea is very intriguing. I kind of wish that I had littles again, but no, I'm glad that they're all grown up. I am excited to see where we go from here. Thank you, Mr. Polvino, for touching base on some of the clubs and activities. I know we really didn't, and it's probably in your list, but we didn't really talk too much about what's going on with the drama club. I'm further meeting virtual, but I know, as like with our athletes and our bands and choruses, they too would be performing and getting ready for what is their big to do coming up in the next month or so. So, I mean, if you could share that pamphlet with us that you were talking about.
Yeah, I will. I'll download it right now and I'll forward it along. Okay.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the music groups come out of as well, because it's a brighter place over at the high school when all of our kids are doing their extracurriculars and bringing life to our building. So thank you, everybody, for everything this evening.
Well, you folks said everything pretty well. I would just like to take a moment to thank our students, because we didn't get here tonight without our students cooperating, as well as our staff, in following protocols that were new to all of us. And all of those efforts have brought us to this point where we feel comfortable with the decisions that are being made on your behalf. So I am appreciative that they worked with their teachers and administrators to make this happen. And Sam, I hope you take that back to your peers. They played a really big role in this, and they deserve to be recognized for the role that they played. I wish everybody well going forward, and I'm excited to see what changes bring for our students and our district. So with that, I'm going to be quiet now and ask my board to move item 7.02.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Perry, I'm a yes.
Okay, Mr. Cordone,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
I'm a yes.
Mrs. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes.
and Mrs. Elbegor.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, folks. Is that enough, everybody? 5 minutes, and we're going to come back, and we're going to take care of some business in executive session. We will come back out of executive session to close the meeting in public. I don't know what time that'll be, but you're welcome to, Well, you'd have to come back. I don't know how that really works, so I'm going to be quiet about that. This technology thing is a little bit above me. Can they come back or not, Mr. Polino or Mr. Wilson?
What's that? Hey, again?
Yeah, we're going to go into executive session. Can they come back and see us close the meeting if they want to?
I believe, Mr. Wilson, if you'd like to let us know, you're the tech guru.
Yeah, the stream will stay up. So if you're watching and you want to see that, just stay on this stream, and it'll go to another placeholder logo. And when we come back, we'll go back live just like this.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right, we're going to take our 5 minutes. To those of you that came tonight, thank you for attending. We hope you enjoyed the meeting and learned something along with us. Have a great evening, rest of your evening. Stay safe, stay healthy. someone move item 7.03,
Hold
please?
it. Second.
Brenda and Fallon and 8:59. All those in favor, thumb up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're good. You wiseacre, Mr. Crandall. You always got to be the different one.
I was just in that mood.
But I caught it. I caught it. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Safe drives home to those of you that are driving.
Good night, everyone.
Stay healthy, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.